NYSERDA.gov. So good afternoon. Oh, you know what? I should probably start my video too. Hi, there we go. Much better. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Today is going to be a non-deliberative and non-voting meeting of the Climate Justice Working Group. As a part of today's meeting, we're going to have a presentation from DEC's Division of Air Resources, and they're going to update us on the Community Air Monitoring Program. So as always, the goal is to keep this meeting to the agreed upon time, so that's the benefit of all of our schedules. So the goal is to never, ever go over. So we're going to try to keep to that 2-hour time limit. Next, oh, yeah, we already have it there. For anybody observing this meeting either live, which no one should be because it's all via WebEx, this is a meeting of the Climate Justice Working Group. This is not a public hearing or forum. We are not going to be taking any testimony or questions from the public during this meeting. If you are attending, we ask that you remain respectful during these proceedings and refrain from raising your hand or attempting to draw attention or interjection at any point. For any members of the press who've joined us today, we're not going to be taking any questions or making any statements. Please refer any inquiries to our press team. It's at pressoffice, one word, at dec.ny.gov. Next slide. So we're going to get started with the agenda for today. We're going to start with opening remarks. Obviously, it's me. We'll do a quick roll call just to see who's here. We're going to talk a bit about the end of the contract with the Loom that's coming up, updates to Climate Justice Working Group membership, updates on our progress with DAC 2.0, the air monitoring presentation that I spoke about, and then we'll discuss next steps. So let's start with a little roll call. Like I said, this is a non-voting, non-deliberative meeting, so we will not need quorum to continue with proceedings, but it's just good to, say hi and know who's here. So let me start with who I'm seeing first, which is Abby.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here with you today. I'm Abby McHugh-Griffa from the Climate Solutions Accelerator.
Hi, Abby. Next, Elizabeth Firth.
You all see me?
You haven't appeared on my screen, but I can definitely hear you.
Oh, weird. Oh, there I am. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Firth. I am the representative from the Department of Labor.
Thank you for joining us, Elizabeth. Next, Jill.
Hi, everybody. Jill Hang from the Adirondack Northwest Association.
Thank you. And Julie.
Hi, everyone. Julie Suarez. Good afternoon. Cornell's College of Ag and Life Sciences.
Next, I'm seeing Michael.
Afternoon, everybody. Michael Duremio with NYSERDA's Energy and Climate Equity Team. Good to be with you.
And Neil, you appear to be the last person listed.
Yep. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Neil Muscatello, New York State Department of Health.
Great. And I don't know if I introduced myself. I probably didn't. Alana Cadell-Tuckey. I'm the director for the Office of Environmental Justice at the Department of Environmental Conservation. And like I said, this is not a voting or deliberative meeting, so we do not require quorum to move forward, but it's good to just, again, say hi to everyone. For other folks who will be jumping on late, if we have some other members who are not here who jump on late, we'll maybe stall things just to introduce them. Next slide. So we're going to have a little discussion about our contract with Loom, and I'm going to pass it over to Michael. Michael.
Thanks, Alana. Okay, so for those that aren't aware or newer to the discussion, we've had the support of Loom advising on this project for several years now. They've provided analytical and facilitative support for the Climate Justice Working Group since its first meeting in 2020. Their contract with the state for this work will conclude on August 31st of this year. The state team here, represented by the state agencies and NYSERDA, is developing a plan for transition to ensure a continuity of services for the Climate Justice Working Group. I want to just take a moment to provide a huge amount of thanks for Alum and their immensely valuable technical assistance and facilitation of the Climate Justice Working Group under this contract. And maybe give a chance for Alex from the Alum team in particular to just say a few words. If you feel so inclined, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I just want to say it's been an honor to serve this working group and help facilitate this awesome work. So thank you for that time.
Thanks, Alex. And team. I'm going to pass it, I think, back to Alana, right?
Yes, and to add to that, it's really been amazing to work with Loom on this over these past 5 years, and it will be, obviously there'll be a transition, but we are immensely grateful to you for everything that you've done for us, how you've worked us through what seemed like an almost impossible task to get where we are today. So you will absolutely, your work and your insight and your consultation will absolutely be missed. So thank you again. So next, we're going to quickly talk about some updates to the Climate Justice Working Group roster. Since our last meeting, we have been able to appoint 2 new members to the Climate Justice Working Group. And just to refresh anybody's memory on the membership terms and our bylaws, but right now we have, membership terms and bylaws. We have 2 new members that will be joining us. I do not believe either are with us today. I don't think they were able to join us for this meeting, but hopefully they'll be able to join us for next meeting. So Arif Ullah and will be joining us as a New York City representative, and Eric Walker will be joining us as our upstate urban representative. Just so folks know, we are still looking to fill that last remaining membership role for a New York City representative. If anybody has any suggestions of people who we think would be a great addition to the Climate Justice Working Group, please feel free to send that along. They can either send it to our Climate Justice Working Group email address or just send that directly to our DEC, our justice@dec.ny.gov email. Just for folks, if anybody is interested who's listening right now, feel free to send me a resume and a bio on yourself and for consideration.
Alana, can I, this is Abby, can I loop
Abby.
back on a question regarding Alum?
Sure.
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Alex and team, for everything. It's been wonderful working with you. You mentioned, Alana, transition, and I'm just curious, like, transition to what exactly? Is DEC taking everything kind of in-house? And is there an opportunity to get outside support in the future? Is there some budget for that? Because it does seem like we've relied pretty heavily on Alum, so I feel worried about not having them.
Yes, I understand your concerns. We don't have any details that I feel comfortable sharing right now, but just know that once we do have everything sort of settled, and the Alum contract isn't ending tomorrow, so we can kind of breathe a sigh of relief about that. But we will absolutely be updating the working group on how we're going to be moving forward. But I just don't have anything that I feel comfortable sort of sharing right now because things are still in progress, still in process, and I don't want to alarm, concern, or give you any sort of false narrative and then have to change that later.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So as I said, we have 2 new members. We're closer to having a full roster for the Climate Justice Working Group. The goal will be to continue finding somebody and move forward with that process. But both Eric and Arif should be joining us for our September meeting. And at that point, we'll have them say hello, tell us a little bit more about themselves and how they feel about coming to help us out with this work. So looking forward to that meeting and looking forward to them meeting you if you haven't already met them. Okay. Next slide. So am I doing this one? Sorry. Yes. All right. So if you look here, according to the Climate Justice Working Group bylaws, each member, for folks who were available and who voted, each member has a term for 3 years. This 3-year term doesn't apply to the director of the Office of Environmental Justice at DEC. So right now, currently, for 7 members, the term is going to conclude on November 14th of 2026. As you know, that is 3 years from the date that we voted on the bylaws and adopted the bylaws. So members may be considered for a subsequent term and are encouraged to continue to participate until we've named a successor. So does anybody have any questions on that before we move forward?
I'm I'm trying to figure out if my term is with this because I joined a little later. But I'm not sure. But we can talk about that offline.
We can absolutely talk about that offline.
Yeah.
We can also have a wider discussion about, obviously, since we did vote on the bylaws a couple of years ago, if maybe we want to update them, but we can definitely have a conversation about that. But for right now, as we're looking at it, terms will generally end around that time. Obviously, there are members of the working group that started a bit later, and those terms will also end 3 years from the date that they were added to the working group.
Yeah, I mean, if we do want to review them, I think something we're sorely missing is backups, like having alternates. I know that's been a big issue with me and others.
Yep, absolutely. So we can add that. We can either add that to our meeting agenda in September, or if you, Elizabeth, wanted to reach out after this, we can definitely have a conversation if you have any specific ideas for any amendments that we might make to the bylaws.
Yeah, that's really it. So happy to talk now or later.
Okay. Since we
Well,
are
actually, just to if it's okay to clarify, make sure it's clear. If basically all those that were on the Climate Justice Working Group when the bylaws were adopted, then that really set the start date, right?
Right.
Even
So
if you
if
were
you
on
were-
it prior
yeah.
to that.
Yes,
right?
if you were on the Climate Justice Working Group, a member of the working group, when we adopted the bylaws, then your quote unquote end date is November 14th of 2026. So for folks who, again, started after we passed the bylaws, we're counting that from your start date with the Climate Justice Working Group. So there are about 7 folks who have the same end date, and then other folks whose end dates are based on their first meeting with the working group. Is that helpful? And again, we can absolutely put this on the agenda for our next meeting, or if we have time at the end of this. But I think it's probably better for us to table it for now and definitely look to have that discussion in September, when we definitely have a little bit more time to sit down and talk about it and discuss any changes, if any, that we're looking to make to the bylaws. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions, thoughts, or concerns with regards to the bylaws before we move forward? I'm going to take that as a no and move forward to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to pass things off to Oliver. Oliver, if you would like to take over, that'd be great.
Hello, everybody. My name is Oliver Riley. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a climate policy analyst in the Office of Environmental Justice. And I'm going to walk us through some updates on DAC 2.0. We're going to be reviewing the updates to the DAC criteria that was voted on in February of this year, and we're going to give a brief overview of the state process to release and implement those updates. We've also identified some opportunities to improve the annual review process for future review cycles. Next slide, please. So on February 11th, 2025, the Climate Justice Working Group voted to update the DAC criteria in the following ways. We updated the indicators to be using the most recent data available, updating the maps to being based on the 2020 U.S. Census, and there was a change to how proximity to landfill indicated how the proximity to landfills indicator is measured. Next slide, please. The state team has been working since the vote to develop maps and supporting materials to facilitate both internal and external public rollout. Especially since this is the first time the DAC criteria is being updated, New York State is undertaking a thorough and intentional implementation of the process that considers all the various programs that use the DAC criteria. The DAC criteria is used in a multitude of ways across state government, including in regulations and policies, climate and environmental quality programs, permitting, and investment guidances. We're nearly complete with all the materials needed to implement DAC 2.0, and we're working to finalize guidance to help state agencies and authorities through the changeover. And Climate Justice Working Group members will get a heads up before the public release. Next slide, please. The Climate Justice Working Group is required by law to review the DAC criteria annually. However, in the course of developing an implementation plan for version 2.0, the state team has identified opportunities to improve the iterative process and the iterative review and update cycle based on the fact that most demographic and indicator basis data are updated on 2, 3, 5, or 10-year cycles. And demographic and indicator basis data is generally calculated based on 5-year estimates. The universe of programs that use DACs rely on predictable and measured updates to the criteria to ensure efficacy in New York State operations. And because of this, the state team is considering ways to streamline the annual review process, including creating standard procedures and schedules so that the process is efficient, transparent, and easier to implement over time. We're going to follow up on this topic, and we have specific we'll follow up on this topic when we have specific recommendations or changes to discuss with the working group. But just wanted to give you a heads up on that's something that we're thinking about and talking about internally. I will pause here for any questions or comments from the working group members. Hearing none, I guess we should move forward. Next slide, please. So next we are going to be hearing from Margaret Lafar from the Division of Air, who's going to be telling us about the community air monitoring program. Margaret?
Wait, Oliver, just a moment. Before we do that, I noticed that Eric Walker, one of our newest Climate Justice Working Group members, was in the attendees. So I have elevated him to a panelist. Apologies, Eric. Would you like to introduce yourself to the working group? I'm so sorry about that.
Hi, everyone. Forgive me.
Oh, you're a little soft.
Hi, everyone. Forgive me for being off camera today. I'm excited to be here. Thanks to all for attending. I just had a quick question about the criteria. Oliver, you mentioned developing an update to make it easier to use. I wondered if there was any consideration for how the criteria might interact and maybe in a bad way interfere with the state's attempt to try and reconcile the overlap between LMI and disadvantaged community criteria and the administration of programs, and just in the pursuit of trying to make things easier to use, wondered if y'all had considered any potential conflicts in the way that the criteria might be used in in addition to the existing income qualification that are used in state programs.
Sure. There's a variety of different metrics by which we try to capture for inequity in the state. LMI is a metric that's used. The DAC criteria, I think, is one of the best methods to capture for this. We have PJAs, the potential environmental justice areas, from CP 29, Commissioner's Policy 29. And we're always interested in figuring out a way to make sure that all of these different methods for measuring inequity coexist harmoniously. That's an ongoing process, and that's just kind of a component of creating the DAC criteria is that there are other things out there that exist, and we need to make sure that the pieces fit together. So it is certainly something we're considering and are happy to discuss further.
Yeah, just again, maybe I'm trying to be like specific about my question here, which is like have you in your update considered any of those interactions or potential conflicts, and have you developed any recommendations around that?
There's a forthcoming investments and benefits guidance for the DAC criteria that I'm not sure if how directly it addresses how it interacts with other measurement systems, but I guess the short answer is it's something we're aware of and are trying to improve. But I think that's something that we need to talk with the working group as a whole on as we move forward.
Alex, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to also say that, Eric, one of the things in the criteria for the DAX is the low income indicator for that is deliberately actually meant to match the low income threshold that is used widely in New York State. So that it's almost deliberate sometimes for it to have overlap and work through those things. But I will say programmatically that different programs use different things, that the DAC criteria are very fundamentally designed to serve the CLCPA legislation, that is to guide that 40% or 30 to 40% of funding to DAC specifically. So there's definitely going to be overlap throughout, but that's almost by design in some ways.
I guess my broader point here is that a challenge is that, you know, the criteria may, I guess there's a separation between the sort of historic ways that programs have been designed, delivered, and implemented through income qualification versus now the need for addressing the investments and benefits mandates of the Climate Act, and that it has specifically created a kerfuffle in the recent discussion of the low and moderate income energy efficiency and electrification programs that are overseen by the Department of Public Service and administered by various utilities in NYSERDA. And so, like, that's just one example of where the overlap creates, I think, some interaction challenges in program design and implementation, and just thinking through either how this group could support advancing less conflict between those two separate types of measures, or administrative agency sort of guidance for reducing that friction internally as they develop their own particular approaches to meeting the mandates. That would, I guess I'm wondering if that was done. Doesn't sound like it's been done yet, but it might be being considered. And so happy to just put that in the bike rack for now as something to continue to discuss. But I see it as a potentially like major thing that gets in the way of you know, like accessing programs and running programs efficiently.
We can definitely add that to in the agenda, maybe for September or even October, just to have for that to be something that we address as the working group for moving forward. So why don't we? Yeah, we can definitely look into that and have that conversation. Are there any?
Yeah, I'll just have one little piece there too. Yeah, I think, you know, Eric, you named NYSERDA as part of those orders. You know, I think we're, you know, very much aware of some of the differing definitions. In fact, that order suggests a broader interpretation of what is low income than what has historically been the case. So there's some shifting even on that front, on the income eligibility front. So I think, yeah, it's certainly something that we're aware of here. And I think, you know, how this group has defined has been an attempt, I think, to focus on the geographies for disadvantaged communities while coupling it with the household's income for purposes of investment and benefits, at least. And so I think, you know, that certainly, I think, was the solution that was, you know, developed by this group. But, you know, certainly something we can talk more about. And, you know, you mentioned points of friction. You know, I think we're mindful of how we can best, address what's being asked of us as one of the program administrators for that funding, along with the utilities, to ensure we're meeting both the intent around climate justice and disadvantaged communities, specifically the geographies, as well as ensuring that we're serving low-income households. And those are sort of complementary in a lot of ways, but also distinct, right? So I think there was a lot of deliberation. I know the climate justice work actually predated me, my time on the climate justice working group, but I know that there was a lot. But certainly something that is shifting and something we can revisit, and happy to share kind of what that looks like at NYSERDA, what we're doing in that, and then when we do have a follow-up conversation.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay, if there are no other questions, comments, or concerns on that, we can return to Margaret and her update on the community air monitoring.
Alana, and we can skip to the next slide and we can go one more. All right, thanks. And I'll just go over our agenda briefly. So we're going to cover an overview of the Community Air Monitoring, or CAM initiative, per the Climate Act, some overall CAM initiative findings across the state, and some important next steps, which include continued community engagement and DEC working with the climate advisory committees and the climate justice working group to develop air pollution reduction strategies, which is the objective of the CAM initiative. All right, next slide. So DEC worked with mobile monitoring contractor, Aclima, to conduct mobile monitoring, which they drove low emission vehicle cars with fast response sensors to measure local levels of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane, ethane to detect natural gas leaks, and other common air pollutants such as fine particulate matter, black carbon, and nitrogen dioxide that mainly come from the combustion of fossil fuels for transportation and heating. Mobile monitoring provides short-term sensor measurements for many pollutants over a large area. However, sensors are not regulatory monitors. The results are supplementary information and represent a local screening level of data to show higher and lower levels across a community to help identify sources. A considerable benefit of the initiative has been the local level focus to help DEC expand the air quality conversation with communities, because people are interested in the pollution levels along their street where they live and work. Next slide. So a little bit about why we conducted statewide community air monitoring. DEC's Community Air Monitoring Initiative was directed by the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, also known as CLCPA, or the Climate Act. The Climate Act focuses on community protection and recognizes that there are some communities in New York that have higher air pollution burdens due to living near traffic, transportation of goods, and areas with multiple commercial and industrial sources. And in addition, people living in these areas often face health and economic inequities. These factors cumulatively make people more vulnerable to the impacts of air pollution and climate change. The Climate Act also requires directing at least 35% of clean energy benefits and reducing emissions to improve air quality in disadvantaged communities. Okay, next slide. So the Climate Act required monitoring in 4 disadvantaged communities. Governor Hochul expanded it to 10, as shown in the map on the right. We selected the communities based on census tracts with higher air pollution burden scores. These scores were calculated from 12 environmental burden DAC indicators that were directly associated with air pollution, such as proximity to traffic and facilities associated with historic discrimination and disinvestment. DEC then took these scores to communities to discuss how the data compares to their lived experiences and use that to finalize the boundaries of the study. Approximately 7 million people live in the census tracts where monitoring occurred, representing 36% of the state's total population, or 69% of the state's population that lives in DACs. The CLCPA required the CAM to identify sources contributing to the higher pollutant levels near sensitive receptor locations where there are vulnerable populations who may be more sensitive to the effects of air pollution, like at schools, playgrounds, public housing, and nursing homes where you'd find children, the elderly, and possibly people with pre-existing health conditions. Along with community input and other information, DEC will use the results of this monitoring to identify sources contributing to air pollution, to inform emission and exposure reduction strategies, to help improve air quality for the communities most in need. Next slide. Okay, so our overall findings. So our findings reflect many of the expected local sources of pollution and some of the lived experiences of the community members. Across the state, higher levels of pollution were found in areas with goods movement and high traffic, including in neighborhoods along highways and arterials accessing highways, along roads with heavy truck and bus traffic, and stop and go traffic patterns. Near some intersections, bus terminals and garages, hospitals, commercial, retail and businesses, and industrial zones. Some of the specific sources included rail yards, construction activities, and facilities such as waste transfer stations, scrap metal processors, vehicle dismantlers, auto body shops, and asphalt plants. These higher pollution levels may be associated with vehicles traveling to and from the facilities. Higher levels of methane were measured near landfills and wastewater treatment facilities. Next slide. So traffic and the movement of goods are a known major source of air pollution. Disadvantaged communities are often burdened with more traffic due to past unjust land use decisions and the location of highways and routes for diesel vehicles traveling to commercial businesses and industrial areas. Health impacts from air pollution may be from a single pollutant or may be felt from a mixture of pollutants, as is seen in the example of traffic-related air pollutants, or TRAP as we call it, which is a mixture of gases and particles. Many health studies link increased health risks from TRAP exposures, including increasing the risk of asthma and heart and lung disease. Additionally, traffic, like other sources of air pollutants, can also have negative quality of life impacts, such as noise and odors. Odors can cause health effects ranging from mild to more serious symptoms and stress. Next slide. Our findings are consistent with other studies, concluding traffic and the movement of goods are a known major source of air pollution, and land use and spatial density of specific source categories contribute to pollution variability across a community. The main conclusion is disadvantaged communities are still experiencing environmental disparities, including higher pollutant levels and quality of life impacts because of unjust land use decisions, disinvestment, and living close to traffic, movement of goods, waste management, and several commercial and industrial zones. Next slide. So DEC has strived to be transparent throughout the entire CAM process by creating and sharing a community engagement plan to ensure communities were informed about the CAM and had the opportunity to provide input, sharing preliminary data updates throughout the monitoring process, creating outreach materials, holding many, more than 60 virtual meetings with our community advisory committees and technical office hours to help answer questions about the data analyses. The CLCPA put forth an ambitious schedule for CAM. We do want to recognize we are behind in releasing the air pollution reduction strategies. However, this was a large-scale study, and we're a relatively small team, so it has taken more time for community engagement, collecting input, thorough data analysis, and reporting of the results. So we're going to go to the next slide. So last summer, last August, DEC's Phase 1 report went live. We did conduct in-person community information sessions for all 10 communities last fall. For our Phase 1 report, DEC had developed a series of interactive story maps. That story map is a digital story that integrates maps, text, and multimedia to inform and engage the user in an interactive environment to explore the data. And this report was presented to the Climate Justice Working Group last year. So for those of you who may not have seen it, the QR code on the screen provides access to the main CAM webpage and the story maps. The story maps provide high-level summaries of the results and mapping tools to help identify locations with higher pollutant concentrations, nearby sensitive receptors, and assist in identifying possible sources contributing to higher air pollution levels. Since the release of the Phase 1 report, DEC has been meeting with community advisory committees and helping them develop their local priorities for mitigation. We're going to outline more of that in a moment. Phase 2 will include a communities report, which will feature all the community input, including recommendations for their specific priorities and strategies from the community members. We hope to release this report early this fall. Phase 2 concludes with a final report outlining New York State's final air pollution reduction strategies and recommendations. To develop this final report, DEC will consult with the Climate Justice Working Group and an interagency working group to review the community's report, prioritize actions, and identify entities with authority to implement those actions. To summarize, the next steps are DEC will finalize the community's report in partnership with the community advisory committees and other stakeholders statewide. And then DEC will present on the final community's report to the Climate Justice Working Group and consult with you and our agency partners for prioritization. We expect this to happen later in the fall. Next slide. Okay, so this slide shows how the CAM results and the community guided recommendations can help inform investment in DACs to reduce air pollution burdens. We understand that people living in DACs face intersecting issues that are the result of economic, health, and environmental burdens. So we're developing a comprehensive approach for mitigation strategies with input from partners across the state, including multi-agency, state, city, and local government, and the Climate Justice Working Group. Acknowledging this type of collaboration is needed to successfully help disadvantaged communities. Some of the strategies may target common sources of air pollution in disadvantaged communities and benefit others of the state not monitored in the initiative. Next slide. So in our story maps, we included a community survey to collect input on air pollution concerns and sources. We also distributed the survey to our community advisory groups. So this slide shows the list of sources of concern from our air pollution community survey to date and sources we also featured in our story maps. Concerns about car and truck traffic made up 59% of the community input as shown in the pie chart here. I'll just give you a minute to, I'm not going to read through all these sources of concern, but just give you a minute to take a look at that. All right. All right, we can go to the next slide. So in addition to the community survey, we distributed an air pollution reduction strategy worksheet to the community advisory groups to collect their recommendations. The next two slides are some recommendations we received to date from CAM study areas in New York City. We're still working with other communities to collect their input, but hope to finish soon and then begin drafting the report. So I'll just mention a few of these that we've heard, I think, in a lot of areas: restricting high emitting vehicles or implementing clean air zones. We've heard that from a lot of the communities that have those last mile warehouses. Expand subsidized public transportation. And electrify diesel transport of refrigeration units. That was something we heard from a few communities, but we also heard from a class in the Bronx that did a little experiment and gave us a presentation on electrifying diesel transport refrigeration units. All right, we'll go to the next one. So again, similar themes that we've heard across the state. Consider traffic calming, smart traffic signals, increase green space, exposure reduction strategies like vegetative barriers and air filtration, especially near sensitive populations, schools, playgrounds, public housing, and then improving buildings and energy efficiency in public housing is another one that we've heard across much of the state. So, and I think that's all I have. We can go to the next slide. And again, the QR code, if you want to get to any of our CAM information, our fact sheets, or the story maps. And if you have questions, you can reach us at clcpa.cam@dec.ny.gov. And I will pass it back to Alana, unless there are questions.
That's what I was going to ask. Thank you so much, Margaret, for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions? I'm scrolling through. I'm not seeing any hands up. All right.
Okay. All right, thanks. And I just want to give a shout out to my CAM team, especially Marilyn Worth, for Marilyn is really leading this phase too. So they've all been great throughout this process and they're going to continue.
Thanks so much. And if folks do have questions on the community air monitoring, as you see, you can always, that they didn't want to ask here, that they pop up later, which I know happens sometimes, you can always email our team. You see that clcpa.cam@dec.ny.gov. Okay.
Did have
Again, thanks so much. Oh,
one quick question. This is Eric.
Eric.
Are there any reporting milestones between now and say when entities are expected to report pursuant to the greenhouse gas reporting rule that's being proposed right now?
So this would be completely separate. So there are no reporting requirements per se for the community air monitoring initiative. We are just working with community members and these community advisory groups to get their feedback on air pollution concerns in their community and priorities for mitigation. So that is, we're kind of wrapping that up over the next month or so, and we'll be putting together our community's report by early fall.
And is it is there any contemplation of using that reporting in any of the in any way to support the rulemaking process?
I see what you're saying. I'm gonna have to, I think, pass on this question. Since we're in the middle, of the comment period for that rulemaking process, I don't want to speak out of turn. But also right now that's that reg is just the reporting piece. So not sure that there would be much crossover here.
Well, I mean, just one sort of thing that's presents to me is, there's the rule around small facilities, they're obligated to report versus big ones. An obvious thing to note would be like, where do communities report from their air monitoring work any like high sources of emissions that might be overlapping with the locations of any of the obligated entities under small or large facilities, et cetera, in order to think about whether or not those limits are the right ones, or if there are any other restrictions in the reporting rule that might need to be adjusted in order to support lowering emissions in those spots where the community reporting has been done. That makes sense?
Yeah, I'm just not sure that I can really answer that right now, because we're in that comment period. But I think we can take that question back and
Yeah, it's a good question.
yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely take it back and look more into it. But no, that's a really good question
Yeah,
about the
thanks.
uses of that information for rulemaking and how it potentially can be used to adjust some of our measures. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Oh, and I want to quickly note that Amber Johnson has also joined us. Just if you wanted to say hi, Amber.
Hi everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay.
All right, if there are no other questions on that, we will move forward. But Eric, that's another question to please send to me. I know I sent you in the chat to send me your question. Make sure you send that one to me as well so I can make sure that it gets addressed. All right, so for our next steps on the process, we have 3 more meetings that are scheduled this year in September, October, and November. So for our next meeting in September, the agenda is going to include a meeting, the Office of Climate Change is going to do a presentation on updates to the Extreme Heat Action Plan. And obviously, I will be adding some of these discussion points that have been brought up here today. Does anybody have any questions, comments, and concerns about our next couple of meetings? And just as a point on that, we are looking to try to create sort of a sense of consistency with regards to how we do the annual updates. So the goal will be for us to, in addition to having that Office of Climate Change, that presentation and discussing those agenda points, is to also hopefully be able to present the working group with our recommendations on whether or not to move forward with any additional adding or any revisions to the disadvantaged communities criteria. So that is also something that we'll be prepared for. And I will definitely email folks in the intervening month. And as always, folks can reach out to me with any questions or concerns that you have, or with any agenda points you'd like to have for that September meeting, or agenda points you'd like to have for either October or November.
Are these meetings, do we have to be in person or are they going to be virtual as well?
So these meetings are going to be in person. This meeting, because it was just really more about the community air monitoring, it is going to, we allowed it to be virtual. But if we're going to potentially make some recommendations on whether or not there should be revisions to the disadvantaged communities criteria, that's most likely going to lead to deliberations and discussions. And for that, in compliance with open meetings law, everybody needs to be in a publicly accessible location. So those will be in person. So just plan for the next 3 meetings to be in person. And obviously, if anything changes, I will absolutely make sure you know well in advance.
Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns before we close things out today? All right, seeing none, thank you for jumping. Oh, Julie, did you unmute yourself? Were you gonna? If you're talking, can't hear you, you might be double muted.
Apparently, I can't figure this out. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Just wanted to say thank you. I really enjoyed the community air quality monitoring update. That was really fascinating work. Just wanted to say thanks.
Yes, thank you so much to our folks from Division of Air. This is really incredible. It's always a pleasure to have you on. It's always a pleasure to work with you. All right. Okay, so again, as I say always, and for folks who are newer, if you have any questions that pop up in between now and the next time we reach out, please feel free to send me any questions, comments, or concerns. If you want to have a quick chat, please reach out to me. And as always, we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. All right, take care. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well.